And here we are, the 40K Q&A. I gotta tell you, I never thought I'd make it this far. I can still remember starting out with 6 subscribers on this channel. And now look at us, 45,000. That just seemed unbelievable a few years ago. But here we are. Now on to the next 45. Hopefully by the end of next year, we'll get to 100K. That will truly be awesome. I will say this, for the 100K, I plan on doing something really out the box and different. I'm hoping you will appreciate the ideas that I have in store for the 100K milestone. And also, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who have subscribed to this channel. Just know that I couldn't do it without you. There would be no channel if there was no subscribers. Can't make a movie if there's no audience. So Vintage 8 does not exist without you. So thank you. Thank you to every one of you. So now on to the Q&A, right? All right, so the first one, what is your favorite analog horror you've made, or which was the most fun to make? What are some of your favorite analog horrors? Children Under the House is still my favorite one that I have made. That one was the most creatively satisfying movie to make. That one to me was just a great marriage of format, genre, and idea. I personally don't think I've topped it yet. Some of my favorite analog horrors, I like the Mandela catalog, I like the Smile tapes, I like bite-sized horror, and it's just to name a few. Oh, and the back rooms, I think that's also amazing. This is an amazing genre, and I'm happy to see that it is growing and changing well beyond what was there 2 years ago. I got a question. Due to how different the writing is in the genre's format from traditional storytelling, I'm wondering how you feel about usage of main characters. Do you prefer driving the plot forward with characters, or having the viewer be the protagonist piecing together the mystery? Me, it just depends on the story or the idea. I love both formats equally, but it has to depend on what the idea is. Some ideas lend itself better to other formats. And you know, it really just depends on where inspiration strikes, or how it strikes, and where it leads. If the idea is better with first person, then let's do first person. If the idea is better suited to having characters, then let's do that. Which of your series stories did you find the easiest to create? Not necessarily story-wise, but also production of the video itself, as well as voice actors. Thank you. Probably the easiest one to make was Boyle Advisory, and the reason for that was it was my first one, so I wasn't too worried about any mistakes that I was making, but also the footage already existed. I didn't really have to create anything new. I just took the footage that already existed and I created a narrative around that. That one was probably the easiest one for me to do. It also took the least amount of time to do. I was making every episode every 2 days. Like I put that whole series probably less than 12 days. Well, I really want to contribute to make the Q&A happen. So what exactly got you into making analog horror? And what would be your tips for someone who wants to get into analog horror making too? So I got into analog horror after reading that GQ article on the Mandela catalog. I read the article, checked out the YouTube site, and thought, you know, I can create this. I can do something like this. And that led me to making Boyle Advisory. I did Boyle Advisory not thinking I would do any more. I thought that channel would just be that. I would just make it and leave it alone as a standalone project. You know, but analog horror can be a lot of fun to make, so I started making more of them. And now we see that it's become quite an addiction, and I can't seem to stop making them. What would your tips be for someone who wants to get into these? You know, my main tip is to watch a few of these. Look at what you like, look at what you don't like, and then create a story around what is available to you. That's usually the most important thing when you're making any movie. What do you have available to you, and how can I take that and make the best story possible? because every one of us has a story in us. What you have to figure out is what can you do better than everyone else? Make that story and then share it with everyone. I also tell you, don't wait to make your story. You know, I talk a lot about making other kinds of movies, narrative movies, and I tell people all the time, movies love money, but don't let money stop you from making your movie. And I think the same thing can be said here. Don't be afraid if someone doesn't like it. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, people won't like it. Not that it's not good, it's just there will be a group of people who won't like your movie. I get many people who don't like the stuff that I do. And you know, but you will find people who do like the things you do. And you will build an audience around that. You know? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the criticism. Anytime you do any creative endeavor is going to be met with criticism. Just accept it. Listen to what they have to say. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. Just move on. That's the main thing. Another thing I think I'm going to start doing is behind the scenes of some of the things that I'm making. I know Married to a Sleepwalker, which comes out next month. At the end of that, I'm going to do a behind the scenes on that particular project. That one was an interesting labor of love, and I think many of you might enjoy hearing how that came to be. Great job for the 40K. Anyway, did you expect Children of the House or the Tangy virus to gain so much traction? To be honest, I never thought any of these would gain any traction. I just figured it would be something that I did to say that I did it. But I'm very happy that people are watching, commenting, and enjoying the work that I'm doing. Do you ever experience burnout making these projects? If you don't, how do you keep it fresh so you don't get tired of it? Yeah, I do get burnout. Coming up with different ideas is a big challenge. The way I beat that is I get ahead. Many of you might be surprised to know, but Itch was done months ago. I did it months ago, and then once Itch is done, I take a little break, and then I move on to the next project. That's why we're scheduled all the way out to April. You gotta get ahead of it. If you write and make movies to a deadline week in and week out, it's almost impossible to sustain, you know? And so my thought is get ahead of it. And then once you get so far ahead, then if you want to go back, rearrange the schedule, you can. If you want to add new things, you can. But you got to get ahead of the material. You got to get ahead of your deadlines. Love your content. Thank you so much. I have heard that all your analog horror is connected. Is this true? Yes, it is true. If so, what is the correct order to watch the different series? If not, which series are connected and which are independent? I'm a huge fan and I am deeply infatuated with your work. I adore it. Thank you so much. That means the world to me. Each film is connected one way or the other. Some are connected directly. Some are connected, indirectly. Children of the House is probably the most disconnected of the bunch, but it still exists in the same world as the rest of them. There are some things that pop up in all of them. The correct order, I have a playlist on the channel called For Those Doing a Deep Dive, and I put it in the order that I think is best to enjoy them. It's kind of in a chronological order, and I say that loosely because most of this stuff happens all over the place, but I think that's the best way to watch them. Congrats, my guy. Thank you. You are an inspiration. Keep it up. Thank you. What inspired you to start making analog horror? As I said in the previous question, the GQ article with the Mandela catalog got me into this. I have a question too. Where did all your videos and pictures from each video come from? They come from different places. I've shot quite a bit, and some of the stuff comes from things that I've shot. Some of the things come from past projects. Some of the things come from archives. Some of the things I generate. They come from wherever they need to make the story work. Your videos are so cool. You absolutely deserve it. Thank you. Love your stuff. Keep it up. Come for the Tangy virus, stay for the rest. And that means you've been here a while. Appreciate it. What makes a good analog horror? That is a tough question. I think what makes an analog horror is what makes a good story, period. What makes any good film. Analog horror in itself is just a genre and just a way of telling stories. You know, I think it's up to the filmmaker to find the right genre for the story. But analog horror is a genre just like any other genre. And I think what makes a good analog horror is it a story worth telling? Is it something that makes the audience feel something? You know, it doesn't necessarily have to scare you. It doesn't necessarily have to disgust you, you know? It doesn't have to do any of these things. It just has to make you feel something, you know? And to me, that's what makes a good story and a good analog horror. How did you get the idea for the Tangivirus and the Oracle project? So I got the idea for the Tangivirus by just going through some of the footage that I've had. I was making a documentary on the history of the parish, and I had this leftover footage, so I took that footage and made a story around that footage. The Oracle project, I was trying to come up with an idea to be as basic and simple as possible. I gave myself the challenge, and you can see that I give myself this challenge quite a bit, is how simple can I be and effective? What is the most basic image I could do and still be interesting and engaging? And that's how the Oracle project came about. So what inspired you? Different things inspire me. You know, Sinkhole was inspired because I was on a shoot that day in the bayou, and I thought about that. Children of the House was inspired by a story that I'd heard about that was under similar circumstances as the one you heard. Children with Black Eyes was inspired by bullying. You know, I hear stories and I hear things, and this is the way I deal with things. I tell stories. You know, my comic book Edie, it was inspired by my kids. You know, things just come from different places. All right, Unknown 7477 has a bunch of them. I will do my best to answer all of these. In One of Us, episode 4, a green vortex which converts into a green eye is shown starting at 3:32. Is this a reshade of the black hole image captured by the Event Horizon Telescope in 2021? Yep, you are correct. That's exactly what it is. Number 2, is the reptilian species mentioned by the Oracle in the Oracle project at 1248-1 and the same as the Olympian species from One of Us, or one and the same as the Children with Black Eyes from its perspective series? All right, so no, they're not. A couple of things about that. So the reptilian species was based on the TV show V from the 80s, and I put it in there as a throwaway reference to that TV series. That particular thing will not again appear in Vintage 8 because after doing that, I learned that it's actually a hurtful reference. So once I learned that it was a hurtful reference, I made a promise that I would never again return to those characters. As far as I'm concerned, those characters got a happy ending after the Tangivirus was stopped. So the Olympian species from One of Us and the aliens from Children with Black Eyes are two different species altogether. The Children with Black Eyes are more your traditional little green men. The Olympian species would be something loosely based on the Greek gods. In fact, One of Us is a ultra complicated version of the Greek myth where original humans had 2 heads, 4 arms, and Zeus separated us into 2 pieces. That's what One of Us is basically based on. Oracle mentions they and the others. Is this in reference to the technologically evolved species aforementioned? Yes, that is who Oracle is talking about. In the Children with Black Eyes, the alien species Daniel metamorphoses into mentions that they believe it's a prison for the first and last enemy. This is a reference to the creature in the Pac-Man sinkhole series. Yes, that is exactly correct. North Shore Research has a symbol of the eye of the fallen god in their company files. I presume this means that the company is either in totality owned by the cult or as members of the cult employed by the company. Would you be willing to tell me which of those were true? So the cult completely controls North Shore Research, but it's a different sect of the cult. So the Dunnington Construction Company believes one thing and North Shore Research means another. The Dunning Construction believes that the eye is to be worshipped, whereas North Shore Research believes that the eye is a tool to be controlled. The Oracle Project. The Oracle predicted 10 to 15 years for natural mutation, which allows mosquitoes to carry the virus. North Shore Research, through intentional gene modification, shortened that to only 5 years. Why did the Oracle not predict this? Well, that's because it didn't happen naturally. As we now see through itch, the prophet created the mutation that led to those mosquitoes. The natural progression that Oracle is speaking about hasn't happened yet. Another instance of seeming inspiration from Christian stories, in the human trials, Adam Newman is invited by the Oracle, as essentially God, to rule as an equal with him over all creation, both immortal, yet one finite and the other infinite. Is this parallel intentional down to the name of the main character, Adam? So, the human trial is based on a Christian story because Oracle has spent its time learning from us. It's copying us. So what it's doing is it's taking our stories and then it's using that to create its own human. It's basically reenacting the stories that it's processed. In the Oracle Project, the Oracle mentions after the curing of the earth that many are still mutated. Is this reference to those who are victim to the secondary infection? Yes, that's the ones who mutated and went to the river. In One of Us Part 1, some advertisements and movie clips are shown in the opening moments. The Snow Creature, a creature feature film from 1954 was shown. A colored orange Fanta advertisement was shown. Orange Fanta did not exist until 1955, and colorized televisions were not affordable to the mid-60s. And likewise, it was not profitable for companies to run colorized advertisements until the early 60s, colorized TVs not taking over until fully into the 80s. So this is likely set around 1960-65. However, is being transmitted around 1995 as the transmitter says that it is transmitting from 30 years in the future. Are those days accurate? Yes. So it is 30 years in the future in that timeline. The series does take place in the 90s through 95. The reason why it's old clips is because it's based on an old local channel that existed in the Tangipahoa area that played old programming. It would play outdated stuff, old movies, old commercials. It was like a local access channel, and it existed in my area in the 90s, and it's a reference to that. I also think it makes a very interesting world too. You know, it's the 90s, but it's got like the 60s aesthetic. Number 10, what year did Michael Cape die? 1908. Will there be a series which details exactly what the Clarks were doing to those children at the Burger Shack? No, I don't think I'll ever go into that story. I think just the hints of what happened is good enough. Are there any difference between the book version of The Children Under the House and the video version? There's a few extra pictures. Actually, there's quite a few extra pictures in it, and I clean up a lot of the dialogue so that it makes sense in a book format. In The Thing Inside of Us, near the end, all those infected by the parasites are taken up into the spaceship, indicating that there is some sort of cultural history to the space worms. In the Kate's Crossing universe, the sentience of the secondary infection seems to be more passive. The worms influence people to do things that would lead to more infection. The only instance of self-reference I can think of is from the Tangi virus at 332, where Jim writes, "Welcome to the family," to Dr. Williams after intentionally infecting her. Which characterization of the worms is more accurate? A kind of invisible yet strong influence, which doesn't necessarily have an identity of its own, or total possession of the host? You're correct in that an invisible yet strong influence is how the aliens work. It is also how the Tangi virus works. Now, I want to tell you that the thing inside of us universe will become canon after it's recut and turned into Married to a Sleepwalker. Where's the maze? The maze is everywhere. It's kind of the back rooms to the Kate's Crossing universe. Theoretically, us in the real world, can access the maze and end up in Kate's Crossing. Even weirder, I will go ahead and tell you, is that the maze could probably be used in accessing the worlds created by Oracle and Prophet. Utilizing my previous question 9, which postulates that the broadcast was seen in the 60s, I infer that Harold Daniels' father from the Children with Black Eyes might have first known of himself being different, a successful experiment, due to being able to see the broadcast. This also assumes that the Children with Black Eyes and Olympians are the same race. Is this accurate? These broadcasts would be anachronisms now. They exist outside of the timeline in which they were created. At the end of One of Us, the timeline of Vintage 8 is created. The backward many are defeated, which is the only thing that survives is the Eye of the Fallen God, which is the thing that exists at the beginning or end of its timeline. Why I choose to name Michael for the founder of the Eye of the Fallen God, which seems to be a pretty cut and dry evil organization. His brother's name is Christian, his name is Michael. Michael's picture is 20 things you don't know about is literally an inverse of Christian's picture, which seems very clear evil twin imagery. In Revelations 12:7-9, the angel Michael throws Satan down to earth. Is it because, in a way, Michael Kate becomes a conduit for the Eye to inflict its influence on the earth, just as through being tossed out of heaven, Satan? I'll answer that question by saying yes and no. The Eye doesn't need Michael to have influence on the earth. What I will say is we've not yet seen what it has planned for Michael or the followers of the fallen God. Do you like seeing videos made which explains your content? I love it. I encourage anyone to do videos to explain the content that I'm working on. If you enjoyed it enough to add on it, then what a great feeling that is, that it inspired you to be creative. What was my inspiration for Itch? Well, Itch was actually a screenplay that I had developed, but I got inspired to turn it into an analog horror. As well, as I was working on the project, I wanted to make something that addressed my thoughts on AI. And I also wanted to do something that was the reverse of the Tangi virus Oracle saga. You know, after you look at the human trial, Oracle, for the most part, seems like a good guy. And Prophet, without a doubt, seems like the antithesis of that, a complete evil character. So I thought giving that character its freedom in a similar way as Oracle, but doing it kind of in a reverse way, would mean more. Just to show that whatever Oracle stands for, Prophet stands for the complete opposite. You know, and I thought this would be a good way to set the stage for their eventual confrontation. Well, that's it for the 40K Q&A. I hope everyone enjoyed this. Again, thank you for subscribing and watching Vintage 8. I couldn't do this without you. I can't stress that enough. If you get a chance, please buy a copy of Edie. If you want to help this channel out, the two best ways is to watch videos and buy that comic book. It really does mean a lot, and it really does help get this channel to the next level. I hope you all look forward to the things that I have coming up next year. I think many of you will enjoy Married to a Sleepwalker. I think you will enjoy Sacrilege and a couple of the other things that I have in development that has not been mentioned yet. I can't wait to see your reactions and hear what you think of them. Well, anyway, I'll see you on the next Q&A. Thank you guys so much. Bye.